It's not surprising that horror movies often turn to real life for inspiration or even entire stories. After all, there's no shortage of true crime or horror in the real world. Most of the time, filmmakers will take creative license, but the sources of their inspiration can remain chilling enough alone. Number 5. Exorcisms have become a staple of paranormal horror films, with varying levels of realism. Many of these films claim to be real accounts of actual events, but it's fair to say most of these are simply inspired by the real stories they claim to tell. The 2011 film The Rite falls into this category. Though the movie strove to make the actual demonic possessions and exorcisms as realistic as possible, the film follows a young seminarian named Michael Kovac. Michael had joined the church to get free university tuition, only to be told his scholarship would be turned into a loan if he quit before taking his vows. Faced with little choice, Michael goes to Italy to train as an exorcist. He's a skeptic and doesn't believe he's actually seeing demonic possession. He is invited to shadow Father Lucas, an older priest played by Anthony Hopkins, in an informal apprenticeship. As he joins Father Lucas in a battle against a demon, Michael's faith in God is renewed. The central story of the film is largely fictional, but the setting is drawn from the account of a real-life exorcist in training. Father Gary Thomas was the subject of a book by journalist Matt Baglio, The Rite: The Making of a Modern Exorcist. Baglio set out with intentions of giving an impartial account of modern exorcisms. He interviewed skeptics and scientists, but his greatest insight came when he sat in a seminar in the exorcism school at Regina Apostolorum. There he met Father Thomas, a middle-aged priest from California. In 2005, he answered his bishop's request to train as an exorcist. Apparently, the rise of New Age religions in America meant more specially trained priests were needed. As the only two Americans on the course, Baglio and Father Thomas became friends, and Baglio got a real insight into what being an exorcist in training was really like. The book aims to do away with the misconceptions perpetuated by Hollywood, so some of the more disturbing events from the film are absent from Father Thomas's story. However, they are inspired by secondhand accounts told to Father Thomas and Baglio. Even though it was mostly fictional, many of the actors on set were worried about what they might be opening themselves up to by taking part. The film may not be as much of a horror as other entries on this list, but it was certainly chilling enough for the actors. As far as we know, no paranormal activity has resulted from this movie, at least not yet. Number 4. The Quiet Ones is a horror film that tells the story of an inhumane experiment conducted on a young woman who appeared to be possessed by a demonic spirit. Oxford University professor Joseph Coupland wants to prove that poltergeists and similar apparently paranormal phenomenon are actually manifestations of our own negative energy. To do that, he has acquired a young woman named Jane, who was abandoned as a child and is haunted by a demon named Evie. He and two assistants conduct experiments on Jane to try to draw out that energy and place it in a doll so they can destroy it. The film is told in part through footage recorded by Brian McNeil, another student at the university, who's brought on board to record their findings. In trying to find a cure for demonic possession, Coupland opens himself up and opens his young assistants up to a dark fate as Jane's past makes itself known. Trailers for The Quiet Ones boast that the film is inspired by a true story, but the true story behind the horror film is unsettling in a different way. The inspiration behind the story is the Philip experiment. The experiment has somewhat similar intentions to that in the film, to prove that paranormal activity is created by our own belief. But beyond that, it's hard to compare the two stories. The real-life Philip experiment took place in Canada under the patronage of the Toronto Society for Psychic Research. A British university professor from Cambridge was involved, though merely as an observer. It was his wife, Iris May Owen, who led the group of 8, only one of whom was a student. Like the fictional Joseph Coupland, they wanted to prove that ghosts are man-made creations, not necessarily a figment of our imaginations, but something real created by our imaginations. To do this, they attempted to create their own ghost. The ghost was that of Philip Aylesford, an aristocratic Englishman who fell in love with a gypsy woman. When his wife found out about the affair, she accused Philip's lover of witchcraft, and the woman was condemned. Heartbroken by the loss of his love, Philip took his own life. The group held seances to contact Philip, and he would respond to yes and no questions about his life. One knock on the table meant yes, 2 meant no, and a scratching meant he couldn't answer the question. The group got real responses from Philip. The only problem was, Philip Aylesford had never existed. He was created by the group, and all of them knew he wasn't real. Still, they witnessed the table shift and began to turn on its side at one point. Measures were taken to make sure the group wasn't consciously or otherwise influencing the results by moving the table themselves. While not as dark as the experiment in The Quiet Ones, and not nearly as dangerous for the participants, it did lead to an eerie conclusion. That if people believe in an entity, it can become real, at least partially real. Number 3. The 2012 film, The Possessions, begins in a similar fashion to many modern horror films. Someone purchases a seemingly innocent item at a garage sale, not realizing a haunting spirit is also included in the purchase. In the case of the film, the item is a box with Hebrew writing etched onto it, which the main character purchases for his daughter. They only realize what a mistake they've truly made when the daughter becomes incredibly possessive of the box, and they realize there's something sinister in the box possessing her. With the help of a rabbi, he discovers that the box is actually a dybbuk box, and houses an evil spirit from Jewish folklore. The possession claims to be inspired by a true story, with elements of the real haunted dybbuk box story woven into the fictional narrative. The dybbuk box the film is inspired by first appeared in 2003 when Kevin Mannis said that he purchased a box from an estate sale of a 103-year-old Holocaust survivor. The old woman's granddaughter said her grandmother had brought only 3 things with her from Europe when she came to America, including the box, which was apparently a Jewish wine cabinet. Her grandmother was very cautious around the box and wouldn't let anybody open it. When Mannis offered her the box, she would not take it. Mannis took the box home and found inside a number of strange things, including locks of hair and a granite statue engraved with the word Shalom. The same day he purchased the box, he ran into his first piece of misfortune. The store he owned had been broken into and trashed. Naturally, he didn't connect the two incidents and gave the box to his mother. The moment his mother took the box, she suffered a stroke. Mannis continued to give the box away, only for disturbing events to happen to whoever had gifted it. Eventually, he sold it on eBay to a student. The student owned the box for a short while, but he and his roommate both developed illnesses, and they decided to get rid of it. The box then fell into the hands of Jason Haxton, a museum curator who collected religious artifacts. Haxton researched the box and wrote a book about it and its history. He also allegedly suffered many unexplained illnesses and misfortune, which were attributed to the box, but it eventually settled, and he now claimed the Dybbuk's business in this world has been finished. Haxton made the box famous, and now it's featured on many paranormal shows. The fame only rose when the possession was released. Haxton offered to have the box shipped over to the filmmakers, but they were scared they may be asking for trouble by bringing it on set. Even without the box on set, a number of strange incidents occurred, including exploding lights and the warehouse where props were being stored burning to the ground. It was only after the film's release that Mannis claimed he'd made the whole story up. The idea of Dybbuk boxes originated with him. However, Mannis's story seems to have taken on a life of its own, with many claiming to have experienced paranormal things in the presence of objects that have become Dybbuk boxes. Number 2. The movie posters for the original The Town That Dreaded Sundown film read, "In 1946, this man killed 5 people. Today, he still lurks in the streets of Texarkana." It was a tagline which was opposed by the real-life town of Texarkana, which straddles the Texas-Arkansas border. But it accurately summed up both the film and the real-life crimes that took place in the city in the spring of 1946. The Town That Dreaded Sundown is now known as one of the first slasher films that are now so popular in the horror genre. But unlike the more famous films that would follow it, the creators of this film wanted their horror to be based in real life. The film begins with a scene that we would now consider a cliché. 2 young lovers sit in their car in a lover's lane when they are attacked by a mysterious figure with a bag over his head. Only his eyes are visible, a piercing blue. The 2 victims are brutally attacked but amazingly survive. The criminal's next victims wouldn't be so lucky. The story mostly follows lone wolf detective Captain Morales, who tries to solve the crime while the culprit, who's given the name The Phantom, continues to slip through their fingertips. The whole town is gripped in fear as it becomes clear the criminal isn't only targeting young couples on lonely roads, and that any of them could be the next victim. The film is today a cult classic, and every Halloween, the real town of Texarkana puts on a special showing of the film. The real-life phantom who committed the crimes that inspired the film was never caught. Between February and May of 1946, there were a string of attacks in the Texas area of Texarkana. The first victims were Jimmy Hollis and Mary Larry, who were attacked while on a secluded road. Like in the film, they were approached by a man they described as about 6 feet tall and wearing a white mask to cover his face. He threatened them with a weapon and forced them to get out of their car. At first, he claimed he didn't want to hurt them, but both were attacked. Thankfully, both survived and managed to get help, but by the time police arrived, the attacker had escaped. Over the following months, 3 more attacks would follow. 5 people lost their lives, while the others were badly hurt but survived. More than 400 people were questioned, and police had a handful of suspects they were more closely investigating. But none matched up to all the evidence, and the Phantom was able to slip away into the night after his final attack. Number 1. Film writer and director Wes Craven was trying to write his second feature horror film after the success of Last House on the Left. Looking for ideas, he came across the legend of Sawney Bean, the leader of a Scottish clan from the 16th century. The disturbing story of a twisted family that would attack and eat travelers became the inspiration behind the cult classic horror film, The Hills Have Eyes. Sawney Bean lived in Scotland in the early 16th century. He and his family made their home inside a maze of caves and tunnels cut into the side of a cliff. Bean supported his family, first through robbery, ambushing travelers in the secluded countryside. That soon escalated, and before long, Bean was taking the lives of travelers and turning their bodies into meals. The number of travelers going missing in this part of Scotland was noticed, but authorities had no clues to determine what had happened to them. Of course, no bodies were ever found, and the secluded Bean clan never interacted with the public for long enough for the secret to get out. It was only luck that brought the terror of the Bean clan to an end. While the family attacked a couple traveling on horseback down a country road, a group of around 20 people came down the same road on their way home from a fair. The villagers managed to rescue the man, though the woman had already passed away, and many of the now extensive Bean clan were taken into custody. A manhunt followed, and sniffer dogs were able to locate the caves. In all, 48 members of the Bean clan were captured. Their fates were no less gruesome than the people they had preyed upon. The Hills Have Eyes took many themes from the legend of Sawney Bean. It tells the story of a suburban family ambushed by a family of depraved criminals led by a man who calls himself Papa Jupiter. It becomes a battle for survival, and like the story of Sawney Bean, those from a more civilized world resort to disturbing violence once attacked. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.